Hello, good afternoon. So, our workplace is a team because I am an elementary school teacher, and at our school, we have kinder through fifth grade students. So, we rely heavily on the lower level grades, so kinder through second grade, to lay the foundation. And it all begins in kindergarten when they are learning their letters, what letter makes what sound, also identifying numbers and basic addition, 1 plus 1 equals 2, and so on. And of course, as they move to the next grade level, the first grade, they're building more on learning how to read. They're building more on how their problem solving skills in math, so that when they get to second grade, they're doing more independent work. They're being able to be challenged, and then once they come to my grade, third grade, they are able to do a lot by themselves. Of course, we're building on what they know. So we do rely heavily in our grade level. We rely on the younger grades to boost our kids up, provide that foundation so that we can keep building what I like to call it as the house. So each grade level, is part of building that house. They lay the foundation, they put up the walls, they put the roof. When they come to us, like in third grade, I would compare that to maybe painting the walls. So we're getting more into the finishing details of a house, so that as they progress through our school, to the next grade level, they're putting on more finishing touches, and they're able to continue building on what they learn in the younger grade levels. Without the younger grade levels, it is almost impossible to get our kids to do well on those state assessments at the end of the year that, the state of Texas, take so highly to every year, and as schools we take so highly to, especially being in a third grade, their first time doing a test. We rely heavily on, them coming in with background knowledge so we can build on what they already know. And in the past, when we get kiddos that don't know some of the basics and don't have a foundation for some of the reading and the math that we expect them to do, it is hard. And I always sit there and I'll talk with my co-teacher and I'll tell her, it's like, we can't build a whole house in one grade level. We need our kiddos to come in with a foundation. So we rely heavily on the other teachers in the lower grade levels to build the foundation so we can keep, building the house and adding the finishing touches. And, the same goes for the upper grade levels. They rely on us heavily because in third grade, this is the first year to take the STAR test, and they rely heavily on us, laying the foundation for them for how they're going to take their tests, the strategies, showing their work, using the computer, showing, just building the foundation for taking a test. And they will come back and tell us thank you sometimes when our kids do well and already have that foundation, because it makes their job a little easier. And without the foundation, it's not easy for us to do our job. So that leads to my next question: how do I rely on my school as a whole? I think we rely on each other. There's definitely the leader and the principal, but I think we all rely on each other. It doesn't matter if I'm teaching third grade, I maybe rely on a second grade teacher to ask her, well, how would you go back and teach this? Like, how would you teach this skill that they're not understanding in third grade that I'm trying to build on that they should have learned in second grade? How would you teach that? Or I know in the reading teacher sometimes will ask the lower level grade levels, kinder first, like, how would you teach reading to a child if they still can't read in third grade? What is something you do to help them out? Same thing for me, because I teach math. I may go to a second grade teacher and ask, how would you teach this? Because they're not understanding it on the third grade level. Or I might go even a step further back and ask first grade, how do I teach this, because they don't understand it. Like, for example, I've got one little girl, poor, bless her heart, she's really, really behind, and I've never taught anything lower than third grade, and she's at the level of where I think she's having a hard time still understanding numbers. So I had a tutor walk in, and she's like, I'm just gonna work on number sense and her identifying numbers and counting. I was like, go for it. I don't really know how to do that. I wouldn't even, I would be doing an injustice trying to teach her how to add, because she's not there yet. So luckily, I was relying on the tutors to help her, hopefully build her foundation, her number sense, so that we can get to the next step of just adding basic addition. But that's how we kind of rely, I think, on each other as a team. Of course, at the end, our principal is our leader, and she gives us the resources. She's the one that's guiding us, that's going to push us, it's going to challenge us to make our school better and our students better and have the most success. And that kind of goes into my next part of building the dynasty. There are a few things about building the dynasty I think are important. And I think it's, the long-term goals. It's not focusing on what's going to happen today, tomorrow. It's what is the end goal, and how are you going to reach that end goal. In our school, we do the backwards design, is what we say. We always look at the end in mind, always have the end in mind, and we start there. And how are we going to plan backwards to help our kids be the most successful? I think that's important in building a dynasty. I think having your teamwork, like I'm talking about now, having a good team that you can rely on. So when you're having a bad day or tough days or tough situations, you can go and ask for help. And of course, they would, come help you. They'll drop everything and help you. Also being accountable is huge. I think we all have to be accountable for ourselves. We have to be accountable for each other. And without that accountability, it becomes hard. And right now, our team is struggling in third grade with accountability with one of our members, I think, that doesn't want to be held accountable or feels like he's being accountable, but he's really not. And it's kind of putting, a little strain on our team because we want him to step up and be more accountable. I think another part is with, the shortage of teachers and whatnot, is developing the young teachers that we have, because it takes a lot to be a teacher now. It's not just coming in and we're going to sing, in circles, we're going to have story time, we're just going to have fun. It is a lot more than that. And I think the younger teachers need to be developed a little more. And even us older teachers that have been doing it for a little while can always learn and progress more in our job. And I think we have to be flexible to changes for a dynasty to happen. Like, our positions are never guaranteed in teaching. I could be teaching third grade today, and tomorrow something comes up and I could be teaching kindergarten. Hopefully that's not the case, because that would be scary, but we always have to be flexible, and also flexible in our days and our weeks, because everything is changing. The kids, what's happening with the students in their lives, what's happening in their day-to-day lives, anything, and we have to be flexible and being able to adjust to the situations as needed. I also think celebrating the goods that happen, and not just, with us adults, with celebrating the good of our students. They may not pass a test, but maybe they went from a 10 at the beginning of the year to a 50 at the middle of the year. We have to celebrate those wins and figure out and plan, how can we get them even further along? How can we move people further along? And also with us teachers, like, we tried this and it worked. How can we keep going? Let's celebrate what you're doing, but let's also keep figuring out ways how we're going to do better. I also think one last thing is you're only as strong as your weakest link. I think that is a very important thing in a dynasty. If your weakest link is not very strong, you're going to be less likely to have success because of them. And how are we able to pick up our lowest person in their weakest times and pick up the slack for them and push them and try to help them out? How are you going to be able to do that? Because in a dynasty, it is not just about one person, it's about the whole team altogether. Just like you mentioned in the video about Alabama and their success, it was never just one person, it was everybody. Of course they had their leader in Nick Saban, but the whole team was putting in their work. And if they have a weak link at one certain part of the field, they're not going to be very successful. And eventually, teams will pick up on that. Same thing in teaching. If one of our teachers is struggling, those kids are going to struggle. How are we going to help that person become better and, figure out how they're going to get the most of their kids when they're struggling? And even like I said, as us teachers, we struggle too. So how are we going to be able to overcome those challenges and, get to the right mentality of we're here for our kids and we got to do the most for our kids. So I think that is what makes up a dynasty. It's more than just, like you said, one person. It is everybody involved, and there's multiple parts to a dynasty, and they don't happen overnight. I think it's the big thing too. They take time. You got to motivate, you got to build, you got to hold people accountable, you got to pick people up when they're down to make a dynasty. Otherwise, you will not have a dynasty. So that's all I have to say for now.